So transhumanism.
Yeah. So, okay, transhumanism. Can you like?
What is transhumanism?
Exactly. Just break that down.
Yeah,
real
like
quick.
let's define it.
Yeah, because this
Here's
could be
how I
taken
see
two
it.
different ways.
Here's how I see it. It's this movement that's based on the idea that the next step of our evolution is to transcend our physical biology by, in a way, incorporating technology, machines, merging with machines, basically becoming machines. And somehow a part of that is to transfer our consciousness from the physical biology into machines. And there's obviously different flavors of this and so forth, but I think that's the most extreme, probably like what most of the elite actually are more in line with, which is transferring your consciousness into a robot, basically. And I mean, yeah, there's so many science fiction books that have talked about stuff like this. There's a show on Netflix. Have y'all seen it called Altered Carbon?
Yes.
It's a pretty cool show. I actually read the book before the show came out, so that was pretty cool because I got to see the book first. And the show does a pretty good job of what's in the book. And then also, obviously, it can go and show you things visually that you couldn't in the book or whatever. But that's one example. But basically, transferring your consciousness from physical bodies into machines, or using machines to allow us to transcend our physical biology and so forth. I think that's the whole, like Ray Kurzweil, he's a big proponent of this. I have a few of his books. He worked at Google for a while too. He invented the digital piano.
Yeah, he had so I think it was up until 2018 or whatever, he had predicted with 86% accuracy all these different trends, like voice to text and I mean way back to personalized computers. And it's pretty gnarly to hear his predictions by 2030, 2040, 2050.
Yeah.
There's a whole idea of the singularity, which is when basically all technology, because it's all growing exponentially due to Moore's law, which is basically that computing power doubles every 18 months, as well as it gets cheaper. So that's why you have iPhone, or someone has a smartphone in rural Mongolia or something, and that's they have the same access to information, so to speak, as people who used to be part of royal families 100 years
This
ago.
is the same price as what a Mac from 1986 or something would have been back then. This is probably cheaper actually.
Yeah. So mapping since 86 or whenever this was, to now look into the future of, it's predicted by, I think it was 2029 is when humans will be as smart as or computers will be as smart as humans. But then by 2035 or 2037, it's supposedly it's gonna all merge. So everything they're doing with the human genome, CRISPR being able to basically copy and paste DNA, to then how that's going to fit in with Neuralink,
Microgenes.
Nano.
What did you say?
Nanotechnology. Microgenes? Did you say?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Oh, they said
it was
microtunes. I was like,
no,
it's
it's
new
just the
Spotify kind of thing,
nanotechnology. No, it's the nanotechnology where they will have essentially the size of the cells is a technological cell that would be able to stimulate whatever necessary to attack different kinds of whether it be disease or whatever they needed to do to keep the human body healthy. And so his prediction was that he can people will be able to live much longer and potentially forever because of that technology,
where you could just keep replacing the parts of your body that are dying.
That's interesting, because someone was making this point that RNA is technically like a technology, because technically it's not living, right? And it can alter the way that your genes are expressed. It's basically telling your cells what proteins to produce, right? And if you envelop it in something that's what's that called? I was just looking at something. I was reading this in a science textbook, what they're teaching kids right now. They're teaching them about how if you have a certain gene missing, for instance, there's sometimes animals or humans, living beings, can be born without the specific, I guess it's a specific nucleotide that allows them to reproduce blood cells, right? And so if you're born without just this one specific nucleotide, and the way that this would happen is your parents have this, your both of them have it, and then they both give you this one missing nucleotide. They're both missing it, but it doesn't affect them. But then they pass it down onto you. You do get it. Then basically within a few weeks out of being born, now you're not producing your own blood. You have to get it pumped in, all that stuff, right? And so you're really at risk for dying and being exposed to like.
But if you're also born with fangs, there's sort of like an adaptation that's the one way you could survive.
If you're also born with what?
So
Fangs.
if you're also born with fangs. So what they did was they've been practicing this in mice and rats, etc., where in vitro they'll insert an envelope where it's basically a bunch of molecules stacked together with this specific coding, this specific RNA, so that when it enters into the bloodstream, whatever, it goes to the correct place, into the liver, and then it starts reproducing itself, or liver or kidneys, it starts reproducing itself so that it starts affecting some of the cells or your genes, whatever. And they say it has like within 6 weeks, it's got 6% of your cells are now replicating their own blood cells, or at least in the mice and rats. And they say for that size, that's very effective, right? And so those mice or rats, they don't have to worry about it anymore. They're not doing this yet in humans, but it was just basically setting the groundwork for, look, we have a technology that can do this. Now, usually when people think of technology, they think of something that's like mechanical, something like some kind of metal or wires or something like that, right? This was purely just biology, purely just, things that we would consider like, there's nothing metal in there. There's no like, hard drive or
There's no electronics.
right,
Yeah.
right. But it's still a technology, and technically it's not living.
Somebody look up the word in Greek, techne.
Somebody. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
just
right.
I was
while
looking
Drake's
this
talking.
up earlier last
It
week.
should
Yeah.
mean like art or technique, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about like biotechnology like that, we're kind of already at that stage where we're already creating biotechnology or nanotechnology that goes into the body.
art.
Yeah.
It's art. Cool.
Or
So-
craft.
So there is an art to changing your biology, changing your DNA that we're already working on, that we've
What is
already.
the word art?
Yeah.
It's artificial.
Oh, there you go. Which means
So
man-made.
biology is artificial, which is natural. There is no actual distinction.
Mhm.
Because basically, if you have a religious sort of context, even actually, I think to a degree, the atheist would have this context. It's like it's like there's things that are natural, and then there's everything else. But it's like it's all one. It's a continuum.
Mhm.
Because when you make something like a phone, aren't you making it out of elements from the earth?
Yes.
Mhm.
You're just putting it together in a somewhat new way.
Mhm.
But cell phone technology, your body already operates on cell phone technology. Your DNA is like an antenna. So it's not like you're actually inventing something new, right? But specifically the point about, actually, I was going to tell you this. I had this conversation with Max this morning because I was wearing my Clockwork Orange shirt and it had the words Clockwork Orange and then it had like a picture. So he was like looking at it, asking me what that was. So I was telling him about the book. And I was describing to him why it's called a clockwork orange, right? So it's like an orange that's natural, biological, but that's like a machine, like clockwork, right? And the story, if you don't know it, is about them trying to basically condition violent youth to be like less violent and less antisocial. And they do that through, spoiler alert, they do that by having them watch like violent images, pornographic images, things that are, obscene when they can't close their eyes. and then they also administer this drug that makes them sick to their stomach. So
Mm.
anytime anything violent happens in their presence, they get sick. And they demonstrate it by having this guy come up on the stage with the experiment guy, who's like the main character. And he's like making fun of the guy, or, you know, talking some shit to him. And he's like, I have no quarrel with you, brother. And the guy's like, oh yeah, motherfucker. You know, he's like smacks him or whatever. And the guy's like, come on now, stop that. And the guy, because he's already kind of reformed himself to a degree, right? And the guy keeps pushing back on the guy and being aggressive. And then finally the guy's like, and he's about to hit him. He's like, oh, like he starts getting sick to his stomach, right? So there, and he's like, what the hell? He doesn't even know he doesn't understand why that's happening, because he didn't really know what they were trying to do. So they're trying to demonstrate this reform program they had for criminals, basically, right? So Clockwork Orange is kind of like the idea of, you know, can you actually take this biological natural thing and treat it that way, right? But I was explaining that to Max, and instead of impulsing him with humans, we're natural creatures, we're not machines. I said to him, but if you think about it, we're kind of like machines too, right? And he's like, yeah. In fact, he actually told me that the other day. He said that he's like, people are kind of like robots, because I don't remember what the context was, but he had been looking about something about robots, and he was seeing how like the way that they move is kind of like how our muscles move and so forth, right? So we've been talking about that. But then I said to him, I was like, you know, so the idea of the Clockwork Orange, right? I was like, but even an orange, it's kind of like a machine, right? I mean, I said, think about an orange. I said, where do oranges come from? And he goes, trees. And I said, where did the tree come from? And he goes, seed. And I was like, so isn't a seed kind of like a computer program? I said, because you take that seed and you put it in the earth, and a machine comes out of it, a tree, an orange tree, if it's an orange seed. And I said, the orange seed never makes anything. It doesn't make an apple tree. It always makes an orange tree. And he was like, yeah, that's really cool, right? So there is no real distinction. So it's not like I'm anti, you know what I mean? Like with the transhumanists, you have the people who push back against that are like the religious people who are like, we are natural creatures of God. We are not machines. We are, you know, it's like there's a difference between nature. Nature is good. Technology is bad. Or, I mean, that's like the fucking Unabomber, okay? I mean, that's what he thought. But what I'm saying is there is no real actual distinction. Like you're pointing out, your body is a technology.
Yeah.
DNA is a technology. It's information storage. It's like you're storing information based on these, like you said, nucleotides, right? These different things that fit together in a certain pattern. So if you have this one always comes with it, and vice versa, right? In this chain. And like you look at that, that's a computer code. And you can actually put other pieces of matter up to it, and it'll configure that matter through the polarities, the electrical polarities of the different atoms and configurations. It'll form it into new compounds and molecules that then interact in new ways and so forth, right?
Dude, you want to know what's so cool about that? What I just learned is that the nucleotides, or when your DNA cells are replicating, right? It is so precise that they say it can replicate something like on the order of 50 or 100 million different genes or different sites, and only mess up once. And they were comparing it to, like, if you took the entire library of encyclopedias and you wanted to replicate them 50 times over, and you only made one typo, that would be the equivalent of how precise your DNA replication is.
Wow.
Right. And so looking at that in the context of a machine, of a technology, it's like we never, there is a very specific process. It is very specific. It is very laid out. Like you said, the orange tree never makes an apple. Humans, when they have sex and they create a child, they never create a monkey. I don't know why, but like it's always that way. But yet in our approach to like how we go about doing things, how we go about creating our world around us, we allow ourselves to just have this, like, I don't know, like this, I guess, would you call it laissez-faire, or like just this attitude that anything goes, that, oh, whatever you create, it's okay, it's whatever, like nothing's perfect. But look at how perfect our technology within us is, you know?
And there are things that happen, but if you kind of break it down, that's mostly environmental stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're fucking up the environment and creating an overall situation that's not really best for us.
Like you can
And
run a computer, but if you try to run a computer in 40-degree weather, it's not going to run.
Exactly.
Or
right?
run a computer underwater.
Right, exactly. Right? It's not
Or
gonna
just like you're running and jostling it while you're trying to, this.
yeah, and like the
creating
hard drive-
environments for
hard drive
people
is
that
like-
are not best for them, which is not necessary. Because then you look at the environments that some people live in, like the elite, where it's like their environments are pristine, basically. So it's not like it's not possible. But I really wanted to hit on that distinction of there is no separation between the natural and the technological. And the problem with acting like there is when you start to bring in sort of, oh, if we just leave everything alone, then everything will work out. Same thing with kids. People think like, oh, if I just don't interfere with my child, they're naturally just going to develop into this amazing genius thing. And it's like, that's not how reality works. Like you're always influencing, the environment's always impulsing something. So it's not like you can just take a hands-off approach. You know what I mean? So that's not the issue I have with transhumanism isn't, hey, human beings are natural. You shouldn't mess with what's natural. It's like, same thing with genetically modifying food or organisms. Per se, that's what evolution is. So it's not like we shouldn't do that. But our starting point within doing it's the problem. Because the starting point within genetic modification right now, or any of these technologies you're talking about, is always profit.
Yeah.
Even if it's for helping people become healthy, like you were talking about, Jess, they're not really interested in that. They're interested in what can they sell you, what can produce some kind of effect that they can market. They're not actually looking at what's best because they don't really understand. So the problem is we're trying to transcend our biology when we don't even understand that. Because like you pointed out, that ability for DNA to replicate and have so few errors, we can't even touch that level of I don't know what you want to call it, error reduction as human beings in terms of the technologies that we have produced. And yet we're trying to now modify the human biology. It's like, we don't even really understand what we have. And so my question is this, and we can go more into all these points, but why is it that our focus is on how can we live forever? How can we do this? How can we do that? And we're like, we haven't even figured out that the systems we're creating are causing problems and stop in solving those. You see what I'm trying to say? Like we're trying to fuck with biology, which is it's a technology we didn't create. We don't understand. And we can't even make sure that the human beings are being fed by the systems we did create.
That's like a surgeon who has like a history of 100% of the time killing every patient he operates on. And then he's like, I'll operate on you. We're like, yeah, 100%. Well, so going back to that, you know what I mean? It's like we have a history of fucking doing a terrible job.
Well, you were just talking about the peer-to-peer Windows things, right? We were talking about right earlier, right? About how you can do updates through peer-to-peer, right? So it's like literally like they're like your computer can upgrade your other friend's computer's immune system, kind of like a virus. And it's like, who created Microsoft again?
Exactly.
What's he trying to do now? Like, wait, what's going on here? It's like, what the fuck?
Passing by.
I trust you. I trust you.
Did you guys know that in Europe, the mothers who are carrying a child before they give birth, if they test positive for Down syndrome, they get the option to abort.
Mm-hmm.
And 95% abort their child. And they came up with this technology that they've now tested on 2 kids, that they're able to adjust that genome so the child is no longer born with Down syndrome.
Really?
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
How do you know at what stage in the birthing process? Maybe not, but at what stage do we get to know?
See, that stuff is cool, right? Like, I'll speak for myself. I wouldn't have a kid if I had a choice. Meaning, if you could intervene, I wouldn't have a kid with Down syndrome. And people are going to say, like, because they're going to have a kid with Down syndrome, they chose to have the kid, or they came out and they didn't know they were going to have it, and so of course they're going to love that child and do what they can for them. So I'm not saying that child is not equally valuable to every other human being that exists, but if you can prevent a child from having to experience that, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And somebody say, but it's God's gift. You don't interfere with God. It's like, hey, there is no God. You're just making shit up. You're just justifying this person's suffering. Would you trade places with them?
Right.
Would you literally, if you could flip a switch and just become a fucking Down syndrome person, you would want that? And people come up with all kinds of like nice stories of like, but people with Down syndrome are the most loving people and so forth. And and I'm like, sure, that I'm not, but that's like such a fucking self-interested point. You see what I'm trying to say? Because really, would you say you would want to have Down syndrome?
In other words, if what you're trying to achieve is to be a loving, happy person, but you're not willing to switch places with somebody who has Down syndrome.
But you're also justifying that this
dishonest.
person is in this situation that is clearly not best.
Exactly.
And like, yes,
that's
we
the
can
whole-
find
it's
the
same thing.
value in something when it's here already. We can try to
Right.
find the best about it. But to justify why you should then convince other people to go ahead and have their kids when they could have prevented it.
It's the same
You know,
thing as,
because
like,
either they don't want to
more people
interfere
are
because
happy.
it's not, well, it's not God's plan, so you don't want to interfere, or just have the abortion, don't have the kid. Do it again. But let's go a step further. What is it in our environment? What is it that is causing children to be born with these situations? And a lot of times, as far as I understand, when the mother is much older, like when they're getting up in the upper 30s, 40s, it increases the risk of that happening, or at least genetic defects and so forth, right? But why is it then that our entire society right now is impulsing people to not have kids? And then women, by the time they're like 30, they're like, oh shit, I wish I had kids because now I realize it actually is important because I was stupid and I listened before. And then they're having kids, but they're not until like they're 32, 33, 34 and so forth, or 40.
Yeah, even
You know, and so it's not about, oh, people with Down syndrome shouldn't exist. Like, I mean, if they're here, they're here. Let's take care of them. Let's support them. But let's not justify and go into some positive fantasy to actually cover up our guilt. Because as a parent, if I had a kid with Down syndrome, I know there would be a point within me where I would feel responsible. Like I created this person and they're like this because of me, you know? And so instead of covering that up, let's actually look at the point, but then also let's address the bigger picture, the environmental points and so forth that would be causing these problems. And no one's even willing to look at that. See, they're just like, oh, we can live forever with technology and stuff. And it's like, why are you trying to live forever when you're not even taking care of the people who are alive here? You know, making the reality best for everybody that's here.
It's automated fear of loss. It's like all fear is fear of loss. And so it's people like, oh shit, I'm gonna die one day. Let me do whatever I can at all costs so that I don't die. Who cares about the 20,000 kids every day that die? I don't want to die.
Think about the ego that is required in the current system to make money from the starting point of greed. The ego that's required and how that ego doesn't want to die. And so what it would do to preserve itself, even to the point where, think about this. Okay, let me ask you this. This is kind of obvious to me. If we had the technology to take your consciousness and transfer it to a machine, okay, let's just say just like altered carbon, right? Would that be you?
No.
Why not? Like, what do y'all think?
It's just your mind.
Okay.
But
somebody says that is me.
You brought up a really good point. The way you told it before is like, I don't know if it was on the podcast or something else, but it was like, if you were to do that, if you were to actually do that, it's not like you're going to experience yourself through two different things. You're you, and you're going to watch this like thing that walks and talks and acts like you. And you're like, oh, it's just like if you had, it's just like, you know, me and Cameron have similar tendencies. Me and Drake have similar tendencies. Me and Mitchell I don't experience myself as Mitchell. We were just programmed the same way.
Or it's like if you have a twin and you're genetically exactly the same, you're two different people.
You're not like living through the twin as like you don't have.
Hell, even you see these people that are like conjoined twins,
right?
And like they have this two heads on the same body. They're still two different people.
But
see what I mean?
Someone would use that argument for, see, you are your mind.
Because you it's just your head that's kind of like separate and conjoined people. So it's like your mind is what identifies you as a different person than the other person.
But it's two different beings that are experiencing themselves through the mind.
Yeah.
So you could take let's just think about it hypothetically. How would you create a copy of someone's consciousness? Well, in all the theories that I've seen, you go through and you map every single aspect of their neurons, or maybe it's like their thought patterns. Like there's different ways you can look at it, but in some way you take this physical structure, you copy it, you encode it, and then you put it over here, either in a simulated format or hopefully in an actual physical configuration, the same. And then you turn that one on. It's like a clone.
Yeah.
But it'd be like thinking, okay, I have a computer program on my computer. I copy it onto your computer. I'm on my computer. Are you watching on your computer the same thing happening that I'm doing on mine? Or are we both using the same program and we're experiencing two totally different things?
Yeah.
In the
So
same
if
way
I-
that if you ever play like Super Smash Brothers, anybody ever play that?
Long time ago. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like if you pick the same character as me,
Right.
it's
Right.
like just because I'm controlling my character doesn't control your
It's
character.
the same set of characteristics,
Yes.
but it's not the same. It's two different versions, two different embodiments of the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty obvious to me. It's not even just obvious. It's like beyond obvious. It's but the point I'm trying to get at is if you're subscribing to the theory that, okay, I'm going to copy my consciousness into a machine or another body or a robot or a computer, and then I'm going to live forever. You have literally just identified solely completely that you are your ego. You have completely identified that you are your consciousness, not even your direct experience of yourself. Do you see what I'm trying to say? You're not identifying with your self-awareness. You're identifying with the computer program that is all the information that you exist, that you exist as in the context of information. And you're saying as long as that continues going on, I'm still existing. So it's total ego. Do you see what I mean? Like, it's like, imagine there is an ego inside of you, a computer program that's running you and you're just letting it happen. And it's convinced you, hey, you can live forever if you just copy me into another machine. You're like, oh yeah. And then meanwhile, you die, you're gone, you're offline, you don't exist. And this machine, this computer program is continuing. And I mean, it's really obvious if you just do this thought experiment. If I copied my consciousness into another machine that was walking around at the same time I am I experiencing myself throughout two different sets of eyes? No. Obviously not. And so I do think, though, that there's people, perhaps maybe even these elite circles, that would say like, no, what are you talking about? Of course, that's who you are, because they can't even consider that there's something else. There's you as a being, there's your mind, and there's your body. There's three different points. You see that there's a distinction between them.
I think the point of wanting to live forever is just like it's the like elite point. It's like, because the not that the average person doesn't want to live forever, but it's like you would only want that from the perspective of your life is really good, or like,
right.
You're basically, you control things. You're like, you want this to not end, right? If you're, for instance, I know someone who, when they were 5 years old, they wanted to commit suicide because they were being abused, right?
Mm.
Like, when you're in a position where your life is not really like worth living, you want to take yourself away from that.
Right.
And so the point that I'm making with this is just, we all have within us, to a certain degree, this elitist kind of thinking, right? Where we'll put ourselves in that position and imagine, oh, I want to live forever. And that's kind of what keeps the elite still a thing in our environment, in our society.
But what do most people, when they think of living forever, how do they think of it? It's not living forever in this life.
Oh, eternally,
right?
in heaven.
They're like, well, I'm okay with dying because my life is like not that great. But then after that, I want to live forever in this other place that someone else created that's way better, that we could never create here because human beings are so flawed and imperfect and everything. So, but the elite are like, dude, I have a fucking great life. Like, why the fuck would I want to leave here?
Yeah.
They're like, I mean, it can only get worse. That's how they're thinking about it, right? But you're absolutely right. And see, that's my point, is the reason why we're focused on this is because of the ego point of, I want to live forever, rather than, is anyone actually alive right now? Like, are we actually living right now? Because if your life is really good and you're like, but I'm having a great life, and then there's other people suffering, it's like, what are you identifying with? Just your experience. And so even if you could live forever, hypothetically, in this physical reality, in this life, if you're not sorting out the fact that other people's lives are shit, you're not directing that, and you're in a position to live forever because you have all this wealth and so forth, isn't that eventually going to come back to bite you in the ass? You're not creating the conditions that are going to support long-term your existence. And in fact, that book I was telling you all about before, Permutation City, that's part of the the point of the book is that these rich people who copy themselves into a computer program so they can live forever, right? Which end up after they dying, like running their corporations and everything after they're dead. They're always afraid that the masses or the people who are alive still are going to realize, hey, they don't have any interest in considering what we're experiencing because they're in a computer fucking simulation. They don't even have to worry about pain if they don't want to. Like, and yet they're running the corporations that are screwing us up. So they're afraid always that the people are going to go and take them offline. Do you see what I mean? Like they're going to go and just like destroy the computer systems or whatever. Right. So that's kind of like one part of the book is that tension between the two, right?
There, we talked about
Mm.
in the past, obviously, everybody wants to make a difference in the world, but nobody considers the context of the world that we live in. So that even if you combat the food industries, it's still in the context of making money. So you're going to end up creating the same issue.
Mhm.
Now, more specifically, what we've talked about is the reason why you would be able to enslave somebody else is because you have something they don't want. So right now, what is it? It says, do this. You're like, do this or else you can't survive. Okay, I'll do the job. I can't eat. The more that the bigger the reward, the more I can enslave you.
Mm.
So what everybody's being convinced to fight for of this, the greatest fucking reward we could possibly think of give me the gift of being able to live forever, right? It's like, won't people do anything for that? In the context of the world that we live in,
Yeah.
how much are they able to now withhold from you? Or how much will you have to do and how far will you go in order to get that? Anything. Everything. You see what I'm saying?
But isn't it kind of crazy that, you know, before they were able to even conceive of creating nanotechnology to help this physical body live forever, they were already creating carbon copies of themselves in their children, that being like elite families.
Mhm.
Like that's why they raised their kids the way they did, was so that they would carry out the family lineage, so that
Right.
they would know how to spend the money, how to run the company, how to run the trust, how to manage all the accounts and distribute the wealth, and so that that will literally last forever within their family line, because it's within the name, and that's how it lives on forever.
Mhm.
And now we're seeing them desiring to not only pass it down to their kids, but for themselves to personally live forever. And
Yeah.
I kind of see that as like a growth of the ego, because initially it was enough to pass it on to your children, but now that's not enough. Now you have to be able to experience it forever.
So it's like Avery always makes this point of like, how stupid is the ego, right? The ego is like a parasite on your mind, though he describes it as like, this is your mind, right? This is your body, your being, your mind. And then on the side of that, there's your ego, just kind of sitting on the side, not aligned with everything else and just sucking away, right? And he's like, how stupid is your ego that it would go so far as to kill the host,
Yeah.
right? Where it would then die. But that's how far it will go because the only purpose is self-preservation and they can't really see the bigger picture. Speaks to us, right? Everyone's like self-interest only, not realizing that the thing that would be in their best self-interest is to do what's best for everybody and everything around them. Because that would support them to have the best life. Now, that the funny part of that is like, yeah, if the host dies, the ego dies, because that's what the ego is used for: power, for energy, for electricity running through it to keep it alive. Just like a computer, if you were to unplug it from the wall, computer can't do nothing, right? And just like Cameron was talking about how the fear of the robots is like, you're going to turn them off in Transmutation City. And so it would go so far as, because the ego is not like thinking for itself, really. It's like, it has all these points that it's using to manipulate you, But at the end of the day, like you can rewrite that because you have the authority.
Mm.
That's why you have this body. It's like, even though you feel stuff, you can still walk and go talk to somebody. Like you can overcome that point, all the thoughts that are telling you not to.
So
So
you cannot participate in that.
right. And you could be like, okay, yeah, that's my ego. It would go so far as to convince you to kill yourself. Suicide.
Right, like that's some kind of solution.
Right. It's like suicide.
Makes
You're like,
sense.
okay, I'm gonna kill myself. So it convinces the host, the ego takes over to the degree where it would convince the host to kill itself, and it dies. But just like I'm writing off what Jess was saying, is like this is the evolution of the ego. It's going to convince you, and the height of ego is the elite, right? It's going to convince you that the thing that would be coolest and best is if you support our production of what? Being
Energy.
able to transfer your ego, your consciousness, your awareness, who you are, into this robot.
Right.
But it's just the ego being like, okay, now I don't fucking need you anymore.
Exactly. It's
Right.
literally this parasite on you going like, I want to live forever.
on.
I need you to do the work to make me a body, please, because I don't want to fucking be in your body anymore. Plus, I always know at any point you could throw me off. So
Right.
if you could just copy me into a machine, I mean, it's like you have these transhumanists, right? It's like, have you guys seen The Matrix? Are you trying to fucking create the Matrix right now? Because that's a pretty good way of trying to create the Matrix. Okay, like what the fuck are you doing?
So what you're referring to is how the machines are ruling everything and the humans are just like batteries plugged into things to generate.
Yeah, it's like become totally automated. You have no, you're just fucked now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
which makes it's already like that. If you look at it, it's already everything is automated. Because as a human being, if you're going based on your thoughts and feelings and emotions, and you're just living according to that, according to the pursuit of happiness and energy, you're already the human sitting in the pod giving your energy to the fucking machines. That's
Wow.
already what you're doing.
And how there's
That's
some
what-
people that just won't wake up in this life because they're literally too old. They're too set in their ways per se. They're not willing to question things. They have too much responsibility that they can't accept that maybe they fuck things up or whatever the case may be. It's like, yeah, those are the people who are just going to remain batteries.
That's interesting because the discussion around the Great Reset in 2030 and all that, right, is they're suggesting to remove themselves from currency, right, or at least from like the currency as we use it today, and instead of having money, your money is going to be just energy, like energy points, and the way that you acquire this energy is by them monitoring your movements. And so when you do certain movements, you'll get rewarded for that. Say, for instance, you watch an ad that they want you to watch. Okay, you get this much energy. And so that's energy that you literally use to power your house. And so it's basically taken away the whole facade that, you know, money is anything but energy.
Where did
Right.
you read this?
If you Google right now, patent WO 2020
Just send the link in the chat.
0606.
Yeah,
Well, it's for the people listening.
For anybody listening, yeah, you're right. Good
Okay.
point. So
So-
go ahead and say it again.
It's you can type patent 060606 or the full thing.
Oh
is
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
WO 2020
This is a real thing.
0606. If you click on that link that I sent you guys, you
Yeah.
can see.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna show you real quick. Here's the future, right?
Mhm.
And it's like you have like this little meter that shows you your energy points either going up or down, and you're watching it going, and you see it going down. You're like, no, which one? This one? This one? Okay. You know, and you're like watching the energy go up and down. You're like, oh, okay. And then
Dude.
you're like, no.
That dude,
Oh, okay, okay.
this is basically like Skinner,
Wow.
right? Dr. Skinner, right?
Yeah, the
Like-
behaviorist. Yeah.
So yeah, the behavior is like basically experimenting on rats or different animals and kids and shit. But in psychology,
Sorry,
it-
go ahead.
it's just basically like they would set random lights to go off, or like they would reward these animals randomly or for certain tasks that they did. And eventually they would watch like how these animals would respond then. And so these animals would start doing these tasks or movements because they thought that's what would give them the reward. So like what he was just basically doing of like energy points going, no, okay. Energy points. Wait, what? And like you're basically
okay,
doing
this
this
one.
dance.
Okay, I'll drink that.
Yeah.
One.
And
It's
so
like remember in China when they were talking about the social credit and people like smoking on a train and like your social credit score is going down or whatever because they're monitoring you. It's like controlling your behavior through the manipulation of these scores, basically.
Right. And so like what ends up happening with those animals is like you get a fucking pigeon hopping around on one leg thinking that's what's getting them fed. When they, in this particular example, they had set it to just like random, just randomly reward the animal whenever. But they could show like if you reward certain behaviors, that animal will continue doing that behavior. But they also showed at the same time, if you punish certain behaviors, that animal may stop doing that behavior, but then they learn to resent the experimenter, which was really interesting. So if you extrapolate that and look at that in the context
say that
of
one more time. Say that one more time.
So if you punish the animal, right, they may stop doing that behavior, or they may do it out of rebellion, but they'll learn to resent the experimenter, right? And they'll start being anger. So like in certain instances, they shocked animals, right? They did.
Or
like,
they give them a low credit score and they couldn't apply for a car loan.
But no, isn't that funny? Like how we all become these angsty teenagers who are resentful.
Well, hold on, but look at online how the whole white supremacy racism shit was like viral all the time, and everything is about that. It's because of the exact same principle. These media agencies are trying to get the clicks.
Mm-hmm.
So they want their ad revenue to go up. And so they're just like, what can we get people to click on? What can we get? It's not about what is actually the best information to have everyone understand or know about.
And then
it's literally, how is drinking water racist? You know, and they're like, that'll get clicks. And then you read the article, it's like just a bunch of bullshit. And you're like, but they just wanted to click because somebody wanted to be like, yep, racist.
And what we're doing is like, we're no longer just being like, what would make sense. We're just like, is that going to give me the social energy, the social like points?
Yeah. And so this like ties into the parenting.
Sorry, Mitch. I just want to make a real quick point.
Yeah.
That's what you guys are doing with your social media.
Mhm.
You're looking at how can you use your social media in a way to impulse people to do something that's best versus what does the average person use it for?
Dopamine.
Exactly. You see, I just want to make that point because it's not to say you can't use social media. Because you look at go follow Jess on Instagram. What is your Instagram, Jess?
It's the Jessica effect.
Yeah.
Or Snapchat. It's your Snapchat.
What is it?
My Instagram is the Jessica effect. EFFE.
Okay.
I'll post it in the description.
Okay. And what is your Snapchat?
My Snapchat is JJ Slam 1. JJSLAM1.
Okay.
It's short for salami.
But you can see an example.
It's short for wanting to be the first girl in my town to dunk it. Hashtag
You're tall enough.
You made that up after you made the name, right?
No.
Oh my God.
No, I needed to make an email to make a Facebook in like 6th grade. And so I was like, JJ Slam 1. And then when I was in like 8th grade or 9th grade when Snapchat came out, I was like, JJ Slam 1 still.
But you came up with that story after you made the username, right?
No. As if
She
that
literally was like, I am going to be
JJ is Jessica Jean.
Uh-huh.
Slam is like dunking it. And 1 is like being
the
the
first
first
one.
person. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So, but go look at her social media because it's an example of someone using social media in a way. I mean, I really wouldn't allow myself to get addicted to it, but the point is, if you get likes, you're more using it to measure what's my influence instead of just can I get energy. And so it's the same thing with people making money. They're just doing it to boost up themselves instead of is this money I'm making a measurement of how I'm actually doing what's best for everybody. Right. So just wanted to point that out. You were going to say something, Mitch, before I interrupted you.
Yeah, well, this is like it's all tying into what we talk about in terms of like parenting philosophy and just in general life philosophy. Looking at it as like, so for example, this article Asif sent about the patent number 666, basically cryptocurrency using body data activity. It's like,
From Microsoft, by the way, patented.
yeah, from Microsoft. It's like, wow, okay.
And one real quick thing, just real quick on that. If you Google it, you'll see a bunch of headlines that's like, people are claiming that 666 this, like disprove that, blah, blah, blah. Just go read it for yourself. Don't read the headlines. Don't read the articles. Just go read it for yourself.
Mhm. Well, yeah, because so
It says it's coupled to the device of the user may verify if the body activity data satisfies one or more conditions set by the cryptocurrency system and award cryptocurrency to the user body activity to the user whose body activity data is verified. Like it's literally exactly what we were talking about. I because I had heard about this, but I didn't read the abstract before. That is
Crazy.
literally
Yeah.
like if you do this,
And-
okay, like if you do this, no. If you do this, points. You get money if you do this. You lose money if you do that. It's like holy shit.
Here's
Oh
the
my
example that they put in the summary is it says, for example, a brainwave or body heat emitted from the user when the user performs the task provided by an information or service provider, such as viewing advertisement, or using certain internet services, can be used in the mining process. Instead of massive
So you have to
computation
react
required,
to the ad in the way that they want you to. You can't just watch it.
you watching it, you automatically get stimulated in a certain way unconsciously, right? Because it's using certain words and images and all that stuff.
Wait,
It's crazy.
well, explain that point
so
again.
this is
Aster?
basically just go ahead.
What particular point?
the point you
Which
said
response to
about
Jeff's question?
if you're watching an ad or something. I just didn't understand it because I was trying to look for it.
So it's right where
What
it says
page?
summary. So it says some exemplary,
Oh, it's on
page one.
Okay.
Some exemplary embodiments of the present disclosure may use human body activity associated with a task provided to a user as a solution to mining challenges in a cryptocurrency system. So it's based off blockchain. You need to like solve certain things, and then it'll mine cryptocurrency from the blockchain. And the solving of the certain things would be you watching an advertisement, and you get paid, right? And so it's
That is so crazy.
That's interesting.
But I mean,
'cause
it's not really crazy. It's like obvious, right? That's
It's
what
interesting because it says like
It's
body
already-
heat
we're
and
already
things
doing
like that, right? And so like if you're watching
it's
an
really
ad and you don't have the response that they expect you to have, it's like nope, didn't work. Sorry, didn't solve it.
there will be glitches, right? Like on the way to refining it. You know what I mean? It's just like when they released the virtual assistant like operator, right? And you'd be like, okay, put me through to customer service. Sorry, I didn't get that. Can you please repeat it?
Hold
right?
on.
It's like imagine that happening. in your
What if
body.
companies figure out how to okay, you know how like Elon Musk will send like something up into space or like NASA would do this and then like companies can get all their stuff put onto the shuttle to send it up because like they're going up there, so you want to put our satellite up there for us, right?
Right.
So imagine like there's another virus, right? And so they're going to come out with a new vaccine. And so all these companies like want to put their little bit of code into the mRNA vaccine so that it goes into your body and then creates like certain reactions or something to certain
Wow.
ads. So they get like cryptocurrency credits. It's like an affiliate program that they're a part of. Jeez.
That's good.
So everyone just look at this. Like this is the world that we are currently accepting and allowing. Is a world where we're basically able to be manipulated based on pleasure and pain. Essentially, it's like at the end of the day, it's like reward, punishment, which
Right.
is like our childhood, right? But now, what's the self-perfected take on this? Is just like Cameron's been explaining with parenting. Cameron and Katie, how they do this is they don't reward or punish their kids. What do? They build their vocabulary so they can just communicate and explain, and it's two-way communication. And so that's the inherent solution within this is basically instead of participating in the system of being manipulated to be, seeking reward or avoiding pain. And like, they like say jump, it's like, instead of that, we're going to create this as equals so that we can communicate and just produce an outcome that's actually best instead of just being, a bunch of slaves.
So
Yeah.
at this point, you should begin to recognize how fundamental vocabulary is in this whole process. But we can't give you the whole thing here. If you were to figure it out now, well, sorry, you just don't have the vocabulary to understand it.
Sorry.
Seriously though. And this was a hard thing for me to accept initially, but now that I actually understand what vocabulary
Somebody
is,
commented one time, they were like, "Oh, you self-perfected people, you just think that just because someone can understand what you're talking about, this just because they're stupid."
if they can't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you just say everyone's stupid if they don't understand it, and it's like, you are stupid. You see how they try to use it as like,
You're
Mhm.
evil.
"Oh, I don't want people to think I think you're stupid."
Right. Yeah.
It's like
There's a lot of stupid people.
everyone's stupid. But here's
I'm
the thing.
stupid.
It's like you were talking about with the kids. The reason why parents don't explain stuff to their kids because the kid can't understand it. And the parent doesn't even understand what the fuck they're trying to explain. So all they can do is just hit them or punish them or threaten them to get them to do what they want so that they survive.
Mhm.
But
and
you accept and allow that, right? And it's because the child doesn't have a high vocabulary, same with the parent. That's why, look at this patent. The elite look at us the same way.
You
They're
know,
like, you're
what-
stupid. You're my child. I don't need to explain shit to you. I'm just gonna fucking mine your body data to, hold on. I'm just going to provide a task to a device of a user, which is communicatively coupled to the server, which communicatively coupled to or comprised in the device of the user may sense body activity of the user, generated based on the sensed body activity of the user. The cryptocurrency system communicatively coupled to the device of the user may verify. It's like they literally think you're a fucking slave.
And if
Think
you
about
didn't
this, they're like,
understand that,
we're
that's
gonna
what
literally
vocabulary
if
sports.
we found a way to turn every single moment of every chemical reaction in your body into a way for you to mine things for us.
well, let me tell you something. With the whole crypto thing, there was a big movement of you buy a super fucking powerful computer that you wouldn't use for even daily tasks.
Right.
You buy a very, very powerful processing computer.
Just the GPU thing.
You could buy it in a rig, or it's just like a processor.
Okay.
Processing unit, and without any graphics processing, you just plug it in. You just plug it in, you let it run, and depending on the price of Bitcoin, it would be profitable for you to just leave that plug in because the amount of electricity it uses versus the amount of Bitcoin it would yield you, it's profitable. Now they're taking that technology and putting it into the human
Your
being.
butt.
Yeah, you're an asshole. That's how it's gonna be administered, just like the coronavirus test.
Well, it can't go in your mouth. You got a mask on.
But that's what the human being's becoming, right? Just we'll create a little, right? Everybody's being impulsed with minimalism and making sure you reduce your carbon footprint. So,
But
have
it'll
it-
only be profitable if you're not using a lot of energy. So, and somehow they're going to make it so that you want to reduce the amount of energy you expend, the amount of resources you use. Remember when Kamala Harris said, we're going to make sure everyone has equal resources to compete? Do you see this is what she's talking about? It's like compete in the game for fucking cryptocurrency mining based on doing Dance Dance Revolution or something all day. I don't know what the fuck they're going to make you do.
Right.
I'm probably going to lose because I would not be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, is Bill Gates can also hook himself up to this shit?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Then I might for a moment.
They'll have some
entertain the
excuse
idea
like,
that
well,
it-
but somebody has to manage the system and therefore.
Oh no, they're gonna do what they did. It's like, you know how like they all fucking went and like took the coronavirus, right? The vaccine, right? Like Obama came out and took the coronavirus vaccine, and then it's like, Elon's gonna do that video shoot of him putting on the Neuralink and like, look at me, like, right, like look, I'm getting the injection for the the nanotechnology, and look at me, It's like we have no fucking idea.
I'm
Like
so fascinated by that. Like,
and look, I don't know if it's fake. I don't know if it's real. Okay.
What?
But just like the point of like, did whoever take the vaccine?
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
Right?
yeah, like, is it
Sorry, not the
actors? Is it real? Is she that like?
But like, okay, just think of watching a movie.
Okay.
How real is it when fucking little Tommy dies in mommy's arms? How real is it when there's like, they're just driving and then there's like a car accident and it's like, and you're like, holy shit, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Right? How real is it when they jump off a building? How real is it in fucking Captain America? He's throwing his shield and all this bullshit. How real is that? Just in the context of what you're able to do and how little the risk would be in terms of like if they did fake it, who would ever fucking know?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, what are you going to do? Test the vial that was like you know what I mean? Like in terms of the vaccination, right? Like, did they really get it kind of thing? It's like, I don't know, but that's not very difficult to fake. Does that make sense? Right. Now, in the context of going back to the point of vocabulary, it's like understanding the depth as to which vocabulary goes, why vocabulary is the solution, so that everybody doesn't turn into crypto fucking mining rigs.
Slaves.
Yeah, whatever. That's fucking crazy.
Computer
Dude,
slaves.
That understanding is reserved for distributors.
Dude, Asif, this thing says, it's talking about these claims, which I don't understand the context, but it says the system of claim 1, wherein the body activity sensed by the sensor comprises at least one of body radiation emitted from the user, body fluid flow, a brain wave, pulse rate, or body heat radiation.
Yeah.
Like,
And
you guys have
this
all
is
seen
just
the
the
Matrix,
beginning.
right?
This is
It's
just
like,
the beginning.
that's literally what the fuck the movie is about. And this is, you said this is Microsoft?
Yeah, if you scroll up to
even
the
look at
top
the
of the
beginning.
patent, it says applicant Microsoft Technology Licensing LLC. One Microsoft.
Yeah, I see it now. Yeah.
Washington.
Yeah, Redmond, Washington. Holy shit. Let's see all these states.
Cameron's like all of his sci-fi dreams are coming true right now. All the books that he reads, he's like, oh my God, this is real life.
Finally.
You know why people are stupid if they don't understand this? Because if you look at the word stupid, what is it? It's like it comes from stupid, right?
Stupidio.
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 Stupide,
The
right?
Latin stupidare.
Stupidoro, right? But if you look at the words that are related to that, right? Stupor. If you're in a stupor, right? What's that mean? That means you're like you're amazed, you're stunned, you're just like you're not here, you're not actually comprehending what's going on. Like it's the same way you look when you're watching a movie. It's the same way you look when you're watching the television. You're in a stupor, right? You're not actually interacting and engaging and understanding and being able to process all of that information and do something with it. It's the same way, like when you're watching a movie, you know it's not real, and yet you act as if it is. And then you walk out of that movie, you walk out, you ever, like, I do this all the time. You ever watch like James Bond, and then you come out of the theater believing or feeling like you're James Bond?
Yes, 100%.
I remember when I was a kid, that's what I would always be disappointed after watching a movie.
Yes,
I feel like I could never, I'm not that. That sucks.
yes, 100%. I love
or like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or whatever.
Spider-Man for
I
me.
could
Spider-Man.
so kill all those people, right?
That was me after watching The Joker. I was like, damn, I'm such the Joker.
Oh, the newest one. I remember after we watched that, Jess, she's ready to
That was so fucked up.
Like Mitchell, like invite me on
that
your
movie.
podcast.
Was so
Invite me on your podcast.
You ever
Mitchell.
just watch like a movie like Brokeback Mountain and just be like, man, I wish.
That's what we're trying to say. That's what we're trying to say this whole time.
Yeah, basically.
I need to get a ranch. Friend.
A mountain.
But
Wait.
the whole point that I'm making with this is like if you're not understanding that this is what is actually going on in real life, right? Then you're in a stupor. You're just watching life go by. You're not actually participating in it. You know?
Did you look at on Google like the etymology?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's really cool because I never looked it up, right? And it comes from that word to be amazed or stunned. And this is when Cameron.
You're like, oh, whoa, dude. Like, whoa, dude. Like, what?
the point
Like,
being
whoa,
that
cryptocurrency in my body, bro. Like, really?
the point is you'll hear a lot. And I'm talking with people listening. Like you'll hear a lot. Cameron being like, "Isn't it like this is obvious to me, right?" And I remember for a long time I was like, how the fuck is that obvious to you? Like a couple of years ago, like Facebook Lives and things like that. I'm like, how is it obvious to you that if Jesus were on this earth, he would be doing this, like things like that, right? It's because we're not considering the system. We're not considering the whole. So now when I read this whole cryptocurrency thing, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm also like, not like, oh, cool, great. I'm like, oh, cool tech, but it makes total sense about how this is where the world is going. right? It doesn't surprise you anymore, Mitch,
Or,
right?
you know, that's like the people who
Right?
think that the market is run by like an invisible hand and market forces and all this
Yeah,
shit.
bullshit.
But like, do you think the elite actually think that? Like, come on, guys.
They are the fucking
Like,
invisible hand.
Hold on,
Remember,
hold on.
remember the whole GameStop thing that
Did
just
you
happened?
see did you see how the invisible hand in that GameStop? Whoa.
And like
He's
I always
like,
say
"Stop."
too. Like I always say too.
Hand's
It's like
stop.
if the elite actually thought there was an like a market forces, they wouldn't do advertising. They wouldn't
Right.
do marketing.
Right.
Marketing is not figuring out what the market wants. It's influencing people to want things.
Yeah.
That's the invisible. It's just
It's
done in
not
this
natural
way
to
where
want
it's not.
McDonald's.
It's not at because what does marketing play to? Your subconscious,
Subconscious.
right? So it's not it's not obvious. So it looks
That's the
invisible,
invisible
just like
hand.
your feelings, right?
That's what a symbol is, right?
You know what's funny on the define stupid on Google?
Mhm.
It says like the first example they give. It says having or showing a great lack of intelligence or common sense, and the example sentence is, "I was stupid enough to think she was perfect." I thought that was kind of interesting.
So
She was definitely not part of self.
Mitch and I were listening to a watch later yesterday, and
By watch later, she means on YouTube. We will take all these videos and save them all to watch later, and then we'll put it at 2x speed and just press shuffle. And it is the best.
It's
Like
so fucking
it's like our
cool.
own radio
so
show. You'll get like some hour-long thing, then it get like a 3-minute rant, and then like it's
anyway,
that's-
Matt-
so
Max has figured out how to do that, by the way.
yes.
Change the speed. So he'll be watching something and he'll be like on fast speed. You can hear it going, and he's just like watching it. And he'll like reverse it back and everything. It's really funny.
that's so cool.
What
So
were you gonna say, Jess?
the video was about when television first came out and how it was doing multiple pictures within 1 second. And that was how they could access like the
It was
subconscious
like
mind.
18 frame refreshes or something per
Okay, yeah.
second.
And nowadays it's up to like 60, 70, sometimes 80 frames per second, you guys. Per second. And that all is happening without you being aware of it. You
Oh.
don't even fucking know what's happening. You have no idea. And when you go and you watch TV, within 30 seconds, you change into a different state. You know, like beta state, gamma state, whatever, all those
Yeah, you
like
go into
states.
alpha, so you're even more
You
easily programmed.
literally go into a different state within 30 seconds of watching television or a movie. And then as you continue to watch, the deeper you go into a deeper state where you're not even like, you're
Oh.
not even here anymore.
Dude,
like,
I
it's
feel that.
fucking crazy.
I feel that. Like when I walk into like let's say a restaurant with like television screens, I feel
yeah.
like the screen's just like drawing me in. Like
Yeah.
I grew up, I wasn't really allowed to watch much TV as a kid, unless it was like Animal Planet or something like that, right? But whenever like there's a television screen that's just like it's big and there's all this like excitement and stuff going on, like I feel drawn to it, and then like I'll feel myself like something's happening where I
You're just like,
it's channeling you.
But
it's
guys,
channeling me.
but that's you can up the frames per second that you perceive it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what technically it is.
Yeah.
Have you guys? I was looking for this video. I can't find it on YouTube anymore, even with the names that I know it's the name of the video. I'll just describe it to you. But I told you about this a long time ago, Steph, I think. But I saw this video like it's probably like 5 or 6 years ago. What's 21? Like 6 years ago, I saw this video on YouTube, and somebody had basically gone onto like their cable and like done a bunch of screen recordings of like the TV, right?
Dude, I can't
And it was things from like news programs specifically, and from like Sports Center. That was another specific one,
With
like
the circles.
ESPN. Right. And it would be like, it would show like, they slowed it down, right? And I think the ones from Sports Center were so specific. It was like
TSN or TSN.
yeah, there was like different ones, but they would show like this. It's like anytime there was like a transition, like a swipe from one thing to another, it's like this circular thing would come spinning
So
in
you
like
can
really
see
fast, right?
You can see it in the top 10 plays. SportsCenter is like the top 10
Yes.
countdown.
It'll be like top 10,
It was-
9,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it shows it doing. And they were talking about the fact of the countdown 10, 9, 8. It's like a hypnosis thing. But they were slowing down on some of these, like this circular thing that would be spinning. Like when you're watching it, it's just like whew, it goes by real fast. But then
let
you
me
slow it
set
down.
the stage. Let me set
Yeah.
the stage.
Yeah.
This was when I first met Cameron in Cancun. We started, like,
No, don't give all that context.
Hold on. And after he shared this with me and I looked it up at home and stuff like that, I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
And
And I was looking on there to see if it's still there, but I can't find that
exactly
video.
same.
I
same for
definitely
me.
found it on going through like one of your old YouTube playlists, like a year
Okay,
ago.
but this isn't something that it's like something someone created. It's like
the
they just
way
recorded the screen.
The way you put it in context of how the elite operate and what energy is and symbols and the Super Bowl and all that stuff, I was like, holy fuck, these guys, I'm gonna start
Well,
using
it's like, why do they put so much money into corporate logos and so forth, right? Because there's like a symbolic nature to it that means more than just what you think the symbol on the surface means. But in any case,
now finish explaining it. So
well,
what do you see?
what was most compelling about it was when they slowed some of these down. And so like the person on the recording had like slowed it down really slow. So it's like rotating really slow. And like, I wish I could find the video of it, because it was like this circular thing, which had, if I had to guess, I'd say like 500 different little tiny icons all over this disc, like popping up at random, like three-dimensionally, like popping up in and out, like all like to the just glance, it would just be like this cool design, like, oh, that's a really cool design they did. But when you slowed it down and you look at the level of detail that went into this, you're like,
That's crazy.
why the fuck would, like, why would it just be a solid disc? Like, there's a certain kind of like, oh, it looks cool or whatever, but there was so much specific, like it looked like some kind of alien computer code symbol messaging sort of thing that was just all like all really fast. And then that point you brought up, Jess, about like the HD and like the high frames rate.
Mhm.
It's like they couldn't have done something like that 30 years ago because the definition and so forth in the TVs wasn't enough. But then when you think about the purpose of Sports Center or the purpose of the news, specifically those two things, because those were the examples that this video was using. The purpose of those things is to pacify you. It's to hypnotize you. It's to prepare you so that, guess what? When the advertisement comes on, you're like in a totally receptive state. Like you just got hypnotized and now you're sitting there like, yes. And just those information's just coming right on in. But man, I'm telling you, if someone can find that video, like it'll blow your mind. Just there was one specific image I remember where it was so detailed. And I'm like, there's no reason they would have gone to that level of detail if there wasn't some kind of information embedded and coded in this. Like,
yeah.
It'd be like if we did an intro for Self-Perfected and I spent like 3 hours on the intro and it was super intricate and it was like a 1 second intro, just like that. You'd be like, what would be the point of that? Clearly there's something more to it than that, right?
I think more
But anyways,
3 hours went into
I don't remember how we got on this topic, but it's like with the whole cryptocurrency and all that stuff, the elite are using, oh, you were talking about the frames rate and all that. Think about the television. Why is it that everybody has televisions? Why is it that so much money was put into that? It's because the people who sell them realized, and the people who benefit in their networks, who they're all connected, realized, damn, we could put this in people's homes and fucking sell to them.
Yeah,
we can manipulate them, their perceptions.
Always.
Exactly. Right. That's why my kids don't watch Netflix. They don't even know. I mean, they might know what Netflix is as an actual thing, but they don't watch it. You know what I mean? We're not watching TV shows. We don't have a television in our home. We're not watching movies. We don't sit down and watch movies together. Like when they're older and they're able to process all of that and we've put enough vocabulary in them, then when they're watching something, they'll be able to process it. So it's not like, oh, you can't see certain things. But until a child has enough vocabulary within them, you don't want Disney to be building your child's vocabulary.
Right.
Yeah, think about that. What happens in every Disney movie? There's like some princess who needs some prince, or like some just bullshit, like
Katie
the whole
made this really
relationships.
cool point. Katie made this really cool point. It's not just Disney. You can find a lot of examples, but a lot of these popular kids things, it's about a kid whose parents are dead.
Yeah.
Or there's some kind of orphan. Like one of their parents died. That's always a specific point. It's like always trying to alienate children from their parents. Like you're some kind of a hero, or you can't be a hero or have amazing adventures unless you get your parents out of the way, kids. Don't let your parents hear what we're telling you. You know, like that kind of shit. You're like, what the remember during the whole COVID thing? That's still going on, I think. But remember back then, back in those times, when the super progressive liberal like teachers were complaining that the drawback to everyone being at home online with school was that now the conservative parents could hear what was being taught in the progressive classrooms.
Right.
Ah.
Right.
And they were like worried about that. You remember?
and they were
then
making
people were
it
like recording these. Yeah.
they were making it so that in certain schools, the parents had to agree to not listen in on their child's classes. Like, what?
That's so fucking weird.
and
Can
they
you
were,
imagine that? Like, wait a second, my child.
yeah,
You don't want me to be involved with what they're learning about. Why?
right, right.
You know why though? Well, I'm not going to say why because we know why, but I mean the part of the justification, because I had a parent actually who was telling me about this, that the teacher really didn't like her because she was always there. They knew she was sitting there beside the kid because they're like, oh, you're helping him with everything. And she was like, no, I'm not. I just want to make sure I know what he's doing so I can help him because you're not going to be helping him later.
Right.
Like, because he's going to have you on a fucking Zoom call and then he can't talk to you anymore.
Right.
And like, I need to actually help him. So I need to learn what he's doing so I can actually help him. And they were like, well, that's an unfair advantage. And it's like,
What?
helping him understand what you're teaching him.
You need to bring everyone down.
So like literally they're like, all we want is we're going to say it once and whoever gets it, A's. If you didn't get it, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Legit.
Wow. Yeah. Do you guys also see this back onto the whole point about stupid? It's also related to the Old English word stopian, like to block or stop. So stupid is like stop, S-T-O-P. It's like stop.
Stop.
Mm.
Yeah, right.
Stop.
If you're stupid, your thinking only goes as so far as, but why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't think beyond whatever you're holding on to.
Or
right?
oh, it just feels good, or oh, this doesn't feel good, so I'm gonna stop.
Like I shouldn't look beyond that. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
That's like you know how in natural cures they don't want you to know about how KT talks about like the basically the news companies are all just giant pharmaceutical agencies or advertising agencies for the pharmaceutical companies, right?
Mhm.
And so even what your news program is an advertisement for the pharmaceutical companies. And so that's why, you're not allowed to say certain things on there because then, that could take away from ad revenue, et cetera, right? But it's like also when you're reading news articles or different articles, whatever, people cannot tell the difference between, and I read this somewhere. I don't remember where I read this, but I read this a long time ago. People cannot tell the difference between an advertisement, an article that was written as an advertisement versus an article that's written by a journalist who's like, oh, this is, what happened or whatever.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so what that means then is, okay, if you are looking at, this, what we talk about as far as like not being able to be functionally literate, right? If you can't tell the difference, you can't immediately discern, oh, this is an advertisement, you're kind of fucked, right? But the vast majority of people are in that boat where they read an article and they think, oh, that was a nice article. But the entire time it was selling them on something. And it kind of also ties into like, you guys know David Ogilvy? You guys heard of him? Yeah. Like when he was making advertisements, this is the guy who Mad Men is basically based off of, right?
Okay. What is he?
So he's basically known as one of the best advertisers of 20th century, pretty much. Okay. He because of his agency, they revolutionized advertising, etc. But he would basically make these ads that were really engaging, really like drew you in with a story and all of that, right? And from there, then people started making entire articles or segments based on a specific thing they're trying to sell you. So for instance, like in a movie, like the evolution of this is today in a movie, you'll see Coca-Cola products or, McDonald's or a certain car. Like think of James Bond. James Bond is basically a huge advertisement for Rolexes or Movado and for Aston Martin. Exactly.
Maybe
Tom Ford, yeah, for sure it worked. for sure. Right. But in that context, that's a movie. Okay, you're going into a movie, there's going to be certain things that like, yeah, I'm going to want this after the movie. But if you're looking at something and thinking it's objective, where you're getting your news from, then, and you can't discern the difference, and they're not telling you the difference, how do you know where the advertisement ends, right? And what I'm suggesting is it never ends. The entire thing is the advertisement.
That's cool. That's
Absolutely. All right. Where do you guys want to go next?
Man, talk about abortion.
Well, we were
Vaccine.
talking originally about the transhumanism point, technology.
Well, like
and so
what I
forth.
mean when I say talk about abortion is, what is life? Because it's a really significant point. I know we talked about it. I get it. Drake gets it. Mitchell gets it. But it's like, when I was first considering the point of what's the difference between a robot and a human being, talking about that, what's the difference between a robot and a human being? And because you have this whole debate on abortion about, it's like, when is it life? And, what is the cutoff time and all that stuff? And it's like getting you fixated on, should we abort? Should abortion be allowed or not be allowed? And like all this stuff. Right? So I think it'd be
I like how the debate is when God infuses the egg with the soul, and I'm like, okay, like that's what you're arguing about.
Yeah,
I love that argument. It's kind of like the Trump card too, because it's like, well, how can you prove when that happens?
right.
So they're like, well, scientifically, the child doesn't feel pain until X number of months or whatever. And they're like, yes, but at conception, the child is infused with the soul. And it's like, I don't remember that part in the Bible.
I don't know how they I don't know how they determine when something or somebody else feels pain, right? Like they say fish don't feel pain. How do they know that?
Yeah, they don't.
Right? It's like maybe you're not seeing the certain receptors that you expect.
Wait, do they say fish don't feel pain, or are you just joking?
No, people say that.
Yeah, people
They say
that.
fish don't feel pain.
They
Yeah.
say that. Like when
they
you're
don't have the same
fishing,
nerves.
yeah, and like you catch a fish, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't feel pain.
It's so
Right.
funny.
People say that.
Like hook its mouth. Like imagine that sensation.
You're like flopping around like crazy. You're like,
Like imagine I shoved you underwater for like a minute, and you're just like, and the fish were like, "Don't worry, they don't feel pain."
they don't feel pain.
They're
Well, they
retarded.
don't have the nerve receptor cells. Blah blah blah. It's like,
Yeah, Drake, were you gonna say something about that?
I don't know what I was gonna say anymore.
The image.
abort.
The point, yeah, there it is. The point was like, how do you know a baby doesn't feel pain at this point? How do you know they're not actually aware at this point? How do you know this?
But that's like the people who are like, well, the people who are poor, I've been with them in the villages, and they're the happiest people on earth. They're the friendliest people.
That's what I was thinking of when you were talking about the Down syndrome point about like, but they're so loving, all that stuff. It's
Right.
like it's the same justification that people use within the context of I wouldn't be poor myself, but they're the happiest people on earth. But I just want to be happy.
If they're so happy and they're like the best and everything, like why are there so many charities and shit?
Yeah, trying to help.
Like it's not best, so don't pretend. And then plus, they're like, I'm sure there's all kinds of health issues and other things that come up with that, right? And like, well, we just need to restructure society so that they are taken care of. And it's like, well, yeah, that is what we need to do, but we should do that in the context of everybody. And like your point about when is something alive or not. How about this? I have the easiest way of looking at it. Everything is alive. All right, there we go. Next. Problem solved. Now,
So how do you decide what to kill and what not to kill?
well, stop killing things. The problem is like we do need to eat, right? But that's not, you can't change that, but you could do things within balance.
Well, that's debatable.
You need to eat food. So that
We
doesn't
could
mean
do
you need to
lab
like
grown
stuff
lamb.
like 5 million cows into a crowded warehouse and like cut up their meat and sell it for 20 cents a pound just so you can like make a whole bunch of money, but throw like 90% of it away because the meat market, gonna manipulate that and everything. It's like, fuck, man. Like
No. That's an invisible hand. Invisible hand.
GameStop.
Is it?
It's a game stopper.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of want to bring in this point that you had mentioned much earlier, but the whole point of like where parents will say, I don't want to influence my child, right? Because that's not natural, right? And I think they're looking at it from the perspective of like, if you plant a seed outside somewhere, the environment will take care of it. It'll grow more than likely, right? Versus like a child, if you let that child just grow out in nature by itself, you're not going to get the same result, right?
But yeah, but that's because the plant doesn't have natural learning ability, right? A child does.
That's a
which
great
means,
point.
like a horse, I don't know what the exact number is, but when they're born, like within an hour or something, they're already walking.
Yeah.
Like they didn't
True.
have to learn how to walk. They didn't have to
Which is
observe and like learn how to actually do that. Like the
It
human
was just
babies,
a seed that unraveled.
right?
basically.
Exactly. The human babies, it's like there's a structure, but then within that, they have to learn everything, which is cool because that's what makes us more flexible and adaptable than any other animal. Is that we can learn. Other animals, by and large, can't. Oh, but Coco the gorilla can do sign language and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, first of all, you watch the videos and it's like, you know, like how they edit these videos and it's like, I, and it's like a cut, am, cut, gorilla, cut, love, cut, humanity, cut. And you're like, okay. I feel like you just got them to do a bunch of signs and it's like I got this sampler. I think you're just sampling, okay? I think this is like the remix. Coco's like, Coco, no, like Trump pulling from Paris Climate Accord. And you're like, I don't think the gorilla said that. It's like every other word is like this obvious like video edits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But why the fuck did I start talking about that?
because human beings are the only ones with a natural learning ability.
Right. So with a child though, there's a lot that's not going to necessarily make sense.
Talking about that.
What?
You're like, why the fuck did I start talking about that? That's hilarious.
Because like the child is downloading from their environment and you can't see it happening, but you can see the effects of it.
Oh, 100%.
Which means
You put a child in front of a TV, they see a program, they start acting out what they saw on the TV. Like they'll start wanting to dress up like that thing, be like that thing, talk about it all the time and so forth, right? So animals don't do that. Not to the same level. And like, parrots, what about parrots? Parrots? I'm like, a parrot is like a tape recorder.
Exactly.
It's not learning
It's
like,
a
and then
parrot.
suddenly it's like solving the fucking Fermat's last enigma over here. It's like, it's not thinking about it. It's not processing. It's not learning. It's not solving problems.
I think that's an issue that people in general believe that parroting is learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because they don't know what learning really is. Like I didn't know what learning was until
Yeah, because people
started
go,
using
well, I
Technics
mean,
Tutor.
when my kids go to school, then they're going to learn all that stuff.
No, then they parrot all this stuff.
It's like, no, then they're done learning.
Mhm.
What I thought learning was for a majority of my life was simply, can I be exposed to a math concept and instantly know how to implement it? Then I know, then I'm learning.
Right.
I've learned that. I can implement it as soon as I learn it. Or in science, it's like, can I do the experiment after they've explained it once? Can I get all the answers right on the test after they only showed me once? Like, am I able to memorize this that fast? Like, just like
Where it's like actually like an ego thing, Renee, right? Where it's like you have to be able to get it and do it. And that's how because
Yeah.
that's the people that are being rewarded by that system.
Mhm.
Rather than it being, no, the purpose of learning is to take each building block and layer it piece by piece until you have the complete picture. That's it.
Yeah.
And so with children, if you don't do that properly, they're not going to have the complete picture. That's the difference between Warren Buffett and the average man on the street. Is he has a more complete picture of how the system works, so he's able to interact with it in a more effective way. He's able to direct more.
So to sort of drive that home with the natural and versus unnatural, like, oh, I just want to let my kid do whatever. It's like, because we as human beings have a natural learning ability, we have more ability to do way more and grow and actually be custodians of this world, right? But that also means we also have a much greater responsibility. You know, that Spider-Man phrase, right? great power comes great responsibility, right? We have a huge responsibility to our children to ensure that their environment is actually best and not just leave it up to chance.
You know how everyone has that, like, oh, children, just leave them alone, they're geniuses kind of thing, right?
Right.
The average person is way more capable than they realize. Not left up to chance, though. Not just stop messing with people. No, if you program them effectively with all the words and all the definitions, then they will do way more than you realize. And it's the same thing with children. So the problem is, because going back to what we were talking about originally, it's like we have this sort of, it's kind of weird. It's like what we are inherently is not good enough. And so we need to get beyond that. Oh, careful.
-1. Damn it. -1 crypto.
His energy.
Hold on a second.
Okay, +2.
I'm back. I'm back at 0 now.
No, you're +1 actually.
Oh,
You're positive. Cameron, you're so positive.
I'm trying to accumulate right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna become elite one day.
You're like one of those cats I see at like the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
The original Black Lives Matter.
Cat lives at it.
What the fuck were we talking about?
Talking about
Programming the kids.
I think
they can be way more.
The name of the podcast today.
what the fuck?
What were we talking about?
But okay, so
you're talking about the human being won't just naturally express all of their capability. You have to program.
But you see the starting point of transhumanism is it's like, this isn't good enough. There's got to be something more. There's got to be better. And I want to get further, and I don't want to accept death, and I want to live forever, and I want to have this, as opposed to let's just get to know what's actually here. Because like we were talking about life, right? We're assuming we already know what life is. And it doesn't mean that we don't know what it is. It means like we've defined it as the experience of our ego of living forever. But that's not life, because life is just everything that exists. I don't know how to make that obvious. When you look around you, what you're seeing, that is life.
Yeah.
Well, look at this. Look at source. I was gonna say look at the source, but it's so funny because you know how everybody says everything came from source. They just take out
that's
the.
tautological.
They take out the word the, and then it becomes this esoteric,
right?
All logic defined.
Everything came from beginning.
Right. That's how cavemen talk, right?
That's the true.
Yeah, true. So if you just put the word the, like we all came from source. We all came from the source. So what is the source of all these things?
Yeah.
Just trace it back. That's what we did with Mitch. Like, remember, Mitch always brings up that time about how I'm like, what is the source of energy? Man, the thing that and again, Mitch, after that time with you, I was learning to express myself at that time. Right?
Is this your Brokeback Mountain story?
No. That's a different story. But a lot of people, not a lot of people, but over time, I had people kind of like bringing that point up, and I would have to direct it, right? But I got better at it. I got better at it, Mitch.
Yeah, same with me. Just like
I'm like, just dude, like, how do you not?
Retard.
Like, how do you?
Fucking
not
stupid.
Actually, not actually, but
But
I'm
you
like,
call this podcast "Why People Are So Stupid"? Damn it!
already did. Damn it. But seriously though, part two, yeah.
Too stupid. Why are people so stupid? Part 2, stupid. Okay, go ahead.
Nice. You worked hard at that one. I wanted to if you look at the electromagnetic spectrum, such a nerd, right?
This is similar to the autistic spectrum, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on the spectrum.
Also, I was thinking about that too. If you just put the word spectrum, 'cause I saw something from Sasha Stone or something on Facebook, and it was like the global elite total dominance spectrum control, and I'm like, you just play the word spectrum and it's like full spectrum dominance, and I'm like, okay.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. I was like, it sounds like real fucking military, like you're gonna go.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
The electromagnetic spectrum, if you look it up, you should look it up. It's actually really important. It'll help you understand energy and all that stuff. But the electromagnetic spectrum is it's a spectrum of electromagnetic wave sizes, and depending on the size of the wave, that it's labeled as how that comes up in the real world. And a sliver of that spectrum is the visible spectrum. So it's like light. You can perceive light, but you can't perceive a Wi-Fi signal with your body, right? So it categorizes each thing like that. So at the very beginning, the weakest waves, for example, is like radio waves, right? You're not going to get very high quality radio waves, right? And then you keep going, and eventually you get, from radio waves to microwaves. You can heat your food and manipulate the water, right? And then you get to the point of infrared, where it's like night vision, right? Because you can see heat almost. So it's infrared waves. And then you have red, which is the start of the the visible spectrum. And then it goes to purple, which is the height of the visible spectrum. Violet, my apologies. Thank you, Drake. And after that, then you have UV rays,
Ultraviolet,
X-rays, and then gamma rays, right? So to put that into context, it's like, that's energy. That's a great example of energy. It takes apart a bunch of different forms of energy. There's sound energy. There's light energy, right? Energy. But if you look at all of those, the source of all of that energy comes from something physical. Radio waves, where does that come from? Microwave, cell phone towers, right? Radio towers, right? Infrared.
Somebody says, I'm like, you can't see like the cell phone signals. You can't see the radio waves. Like, yeah, but I can hear them. I'm like, no, you don't hear the radio waves. Okay.
Yeah.
So amplifier.
So
No,
exactly.
I
You
hear
hear is
radio
making that
waves,
sound,
bro.
but that's how little people are educated.
And what do people say? They say you can see your aura, though. It's like, with technology or schizophrenia. No, I'm joking.
Some people can just see auras, man. They could just like see the energy.
It's like,
massive.
okay, then call me on your cell phone without your cell phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, call my phone.
I'm sending you good vibes, bro.
Oh, okay. then.
Not received.
Delivery error.
Call blocked.
So you have that end of the spectrum all the way up to,
we could make a fortune off of just selling aura blocking technology. Like a technology that blocks other people's bad intentions.
Yeah.
Aura blocking technology. We could have that in our new shirts.
I think somebody's already making a fortune off of that technology.
Yeah, that already exists, right?
Here's the technology that all you have to do is wear it, and it broadcasts abundance 24/7.
And we
For
can't
me.
make any claims to results.
For me, the person who started the business, who didn't use this to make the money, because if I had, then you could have had it for free. But
Also, we can't back these claims up because the FDA won't approve it because of
that's the only reason.
Yeah.
because all science is bullshit.
The
Believe
FDA.
science.
They're on some bullshit, like you have to physically actually show some evidence of something.
So stupid.
They're so
Dumb.
limited.
They're like so disconnected from the source.
But so wait, yeah, let me fucking finish this shit, dude. That's good. It's really fun. This one's really fun though. It's like a fun podcast.
Yeah.
All of them are fun, but this one's funny. But anyways, at the other end of the spectrum, you have UV rays, gamma rays, right? And the UV rays, they come from the sun. Anyways, there's something physical producing this. Sound, it requires something physical that is interacted with.
Yeah, that's obvious, right?
That
If it's
vibe.
sound,
Right.
something physically has to happen.
But let me tell you, when
Pressure
I realized that, I was in stupor. I was stunned.
You're
How
stupid.
how
You're
obvious it
stupendous.
was, because I was stupid. I couldn't consider that because I just accepted a bunch of beliefs and information about how things work, right, Mitch? Right? Like we were just told.
But why is the energy thing so important?
Why? Because that way I don't have to fucking deal with all this shit.
Yeah, it's like the perfect way to keep someone enslaved, because if you can like feel good, somehow that gets accepted, that if you feel good, it must be true. So like people go to church, they're like, I felt the spirit because I just got goosebumps.
So
It's like, what?
Yen posted a status. The idea, it was like a really short status, and tell me if you guys know what I'm talking about. But he said, if you educate a slave, you free them. Something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And there was this guy who commented, he said, well, maybe you have a more clever slave. You won't be free until you can just choose to be in peace and joy 24 hours a day.
Oh, you're fucked, buddy.
I commented, I'm like, wow, that's my second favorite slave trick. Just always be peace and happy and don't do anything. I haven't checked that back.
Hey, I want to read this quote real quick to add to your point here.
No, fuck
From
off.
this book I'm reading from Felix Dennis.
Yeah.
He was the guy who created Maxim. He was worth like $500 million when he died.
The How to Be Rich one?
Yeah, he says, how to get rich, I think.
How to
He
get
said, this is not his quote, but it's just from his book. But it's from some guy named H.L. Mencken. He said, the inferior man's reasons for hating knowledge are not hard to discern. He hates it because it is complex, because it puts an unbearable burden on his meager capacity for taking in ideas. Thus, his search is always for shortcuts. All superstitions are such shortcuts. Their aim is to make the unintelligible simple and even obvious. That's kind of like saying the whole point is to make stupid people feel smart.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool point because it's like showing you the way to create something is to understand it and then do all the details and everything to make it happen. But the whole energy thing plays into this stupid person desire to just be able to wish something into existence.
Like, I understand the universe. I understand how things work.
I know the mysteries of the universe. And,
Right,
and,
exactly.
and I'm such a wise, mature being that I believe I can just imagine something.
And all my relationships suck ass. Can't make money.
Like I'm a piece of shit. Like I'm super spiteful in my relationships. I'm super envious. I'm super jealous. I'm lazy as fuck. I don't even want to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah,
I'm depressed all the time. But I'm super positive, and I'm on that journey or whatever.
So that's the point. It's like that's like one of the best tricks of like imagine like it was a 1-on-1 100-meter race, and whoever won this race like wins the Olympics. And I could just convince my opponent that the way you actually win in the bigger picture of things is like you just go somewhere else. You just stay at home. You don't come to the race.
Yeah, exactly. That's
like,
exactly
oh
what
my
the
God.
elite are doing. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, perfect. Like I could literally just fucking, there's no competition. Easy.
This is the distinction between spells and tricks.
Ooh.
Right? Like a spell is like you understand reality, you're using words because that's how you actually influence things in this world, right? You use words, right? You have to learn how to spell first. But what everyone else is trying to do tricks.
Right.
And
Which
the
are-
tricks are just like the pretend magicians that are just fucking illusions. Is that what you were going to say? That's
No,
what you were
I was going to
Jake?
say a trick is, the person who pays the prostitute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A trick
Yeah,
is a
exactly.
prostitute
Yeah.
butt who just pays to get fucked.
You're just a John.
You're just a John.
Right?
But no,
but
isn't
the
that-
point is like
but
the
isn't that-
magician is just doing a trick. It's not real. It's an illusion. It's a sleight of hand. You're distracting you from something.
But isn't that what people go to like all these events and all this stuff and they're not doing it from meeting new people and maybe just getting like a new sense of like revitalization so I can go focus more because I got to like enjoy myself, hear new perspectives, and then go focus.
Well, if you're not upgrading your vocabulary in between, then it's no different than going to a Super Bowl.
Right.
It's no different than, but at the same time, if you go to Gen Event, you can meet us. So it's a benefit. Anyway. My
That's how
point
I-
is, generally, if you go to Tony Robbins, you come back, you haven't changed.
Right.
and
There's
see,
no shortcut.
you'll have some spike of activity. You'll experience some wave of like, oh yeah, fucking things are really good. But then whatever made you depressed before
Hold on.
the
No,
last
you'll be like,
quarter or 6 months, then it's gonna come up again and fuck you up again.
You're like, I'm doing so well. I'm so focused on my goals now because you're like just doing the follow-up course for the seminar. It's like you're not actually doing anything.
Like you're
You know,
just going
but
through the workbook.
Sometimes like you'll kind of like let go of some things and so business will pick up a little bit more, but that's a business you already had or something you were already doing. It's not like you fundamentally changed anything, right?
So that's what a trick is. It's like you're paying to get fucked. That's what the prostitute client is.
So
What do you-
okay,
what are
all
the,
right.
what's the tricks?
Do people generally trust magicians?
I don't think so. I don't know.
No.
Do they?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean,
It was
not
like you
like
have something
with
up your
anything
sleeve?
major.
But why? Why?
Because they might
like-
have something up their sleeve.
Because they know you're going to trick them.
Because yeah, they know like the whole thing is a deceit.
Right. It's a big deception. Yeah.
It's a big deception, right? And so like most people walk around, they
The big lie.
they want to be magicians. Most people are just like they're pretending that it's like
I
Cam was,
wanted that.
yeah. Cam was talking about on a previous call about how like there's that story in the Bible of Moses laying down his staff and it turning into a serpent.
No. I have a better story. Cam, remember in Houston, I put the coin in one hand, and then what was that to you? I put a coin in my one hand, and you thought it was in the hand, and then I opened it and it wasn't there. Was that with you or Katie?
You're asking if I was fooled by that trick.
Yeah, I remember you were fooled by the trick.
I don't know.
if it was-
I remember you were doing that though, but yeah.
I remember it was with you or Katie or somebody. But
Okay, yeah.
somebody. It was great. It felt
Yeah.
great. I love fucking lying.
Gotcha.
Anyways, I feel like your story was better to tell you.
I no, that was a great story. I love that story.
Remember that time,
It's
Asif, when I
beautiful.
got your nose? And it's right, look, I got it right now.
Dude, that
Look, I
fucked me
got
up.
it. Look at my thumb.
No,
Look what I'm
No.
doing.
no, that's a virtual background. That's not true.
It never made sense because I'm like, why would your thumb be backwards?
Then I exactly, and then I started doing it with like my my.
Maybe if
my
you did it like
index.
this. Look, it's really long now.
Then I started doing it with my index finger.
Okay, that actually makes more sense. But you seem like you seem like you're doing something shady there. You're like,
Yeah, I haven't done it in 10 years, Cameron. I'm sorry, dude.
you need to practice your tricks.
That one looks good. That one looks good.
Oh yeah, that's a better one.
But the point that I was making
Yeah, good.
is just basically like right now people are very distrustful of each other. And it's because everyone's been like almost everyone's been conditioned to be the magician or to want to be the magician or to just look like you can do the trick. And the point that I was making with that story is like Moses lays down his staff and then the Pharaoh's magicians, I guess. Yeah, I guess they were magicians, right? They say, oh, we could do that trick too, right? And
What
then
happened when he laid down his staff, just to be clear?
turns into a snake, right? And so then they lay down their staffs or their rods or whatever.
Like he's trying to
And-
prove his God is the real God or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in that story, this may or may not be how that story ends, but I think in that story, his staff or snake, whatever,
Like
eats
gobbles
their
up all the
snakes.
other snakes.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh.
That's a really good trick.
He's like, and for my next trick, we're gonna kill your firstborn children.
Any volunteers? Yeah. But essentially the difference between like actual creation and it's more for the individual who's listening to this, right? Where you can either be just bullshitting yourself, deceiving yourself, knowing that you're being deceitful, knowing that you're just faking it to make it or whatever, or you could actually be creating for real, which is what we call spells.
The difference in the starting point is, are you just doing this to survive for your own self-interest? Or are you doing it for what's best for everybody? In which case that has to also include your self-interest and your survival as well. Self-interest meaning your survival. So you shouldn't have to sacrifice. Like anything that we're suggesting, you shouldn't have to sacrifice to do it. But the reason why people are faking it's like everyone's thinking that if I fake it, other people will believe me and then I'll be able to sell them.
You know, Asif told me something the other day, and it was really cool. He said, when you do the process that we explain here, you know, use your technotutor, do DIP, self-forgiveness, etc. As you're doing that process, you change, right? And that change ripples in that moment with all your interactions, right? And you can make that as esoteric as you like, but you actually physically change. And so when you go and talk to your relationships, that whole dynamic has shifted.
Yeah.
Even if it's just slightly then, but as you continue doing this process, and it's something that I've seen for myself, my family, people that I know are also walking this process that I see on a regular basis, I can see the initial change is usually like not noticeable, but over time it accumulates and you're like, holy shit, how did we get here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's a really spot on example. And it's like well, I'm gonna back that. Now, coming back to the whole point of all of the energy coming from source. What is the source of the energy? Just fucking trace it back. Now, going back to Cameron just being like, how do I describe like what's life and what isn't life? Let me make it simple. Everything is alive. Well, if you trace back the source of everything, somebody give me an example. Okay, let's start with the human being, right? Where did we come from? Mommy and daddy got together. So, but even more practically, it's like the sperm and the egg. And where did that come? Their bodies created it. How did they create it? It's like their amino acids came together and created the sperm and the egg and the ova or the ovum. And the way that those things were created, it used the nutrients from what they're eating. Where's the food come from? Comes from the earth. Whether it was really manufactured, whatever the case may be. Now a chair, cotton, polyester, wood, like everything is from the earth. And honestly speaking, can you guys think of like a exception to that?
Asteroids.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But everything on the earth.
No, I mean, everything that we know of comes from some materials here on the earth. And then maybe it's processed or something like that. But yeah.
So then if you looked at dirt, would you say like if somebody just looked at dirt or if they thought of the earth, they wouldn't say it's alive, right?
No.
Right?
The average person wouldn't say that.
But it's like, how is the earth different from us? Are you identifying like we can speak? Because the animals, like they can't speak, right? There's things that make sounds that we don't hear. But the earth does speak. Like there's the ocean that crashes and the wind that blows the trees. Isn't that the same thing as your vocal cords vibrating? So it's like I'm thinking of just shit as we go because I never really investigated to this degree. Because it's pretty obvious to me, so I never really kept looking into it, right? But it's like, how is that different than speaking? Point being, yeah, it all comes from this earth. Even the fucking plumbing, right? Like the plumbing that or the copper piping, right?
Yeah.
Like that comes from the earth.
The chemicals.
What are some more like even more artificial or man-made stuff that people would be like?
AI itself, like computers and like the internet, right? It's like it's held on physical servers or hard drive.
And that's the case. But see, what people are referring to with like AI or your mind, they're referring to a layer on top of the physical. So in other words, AI, you're right, it's all contained within a program. It's contained within on a physical hardware, just like the mind. But if you look at the brain and you look at the electrical impulse of a thought, one little impulse is alone wouldn't be a thought. It's like a little agglomeration of impulses, of electrical impulses. And you look at that and then you describe that as a thought. You describing that as a thought is a layer of information that we're placing onto it that is symbolic. Because we're looking at something visible. What a symbol is, something visible that represents something invisible. So we're looking at something visible and we're saying it represents a thought. What is a thought? Is the content of cognition, right? Where another example of a symbol, right? If I do this, what does this mean?
Maybe hi
or bye.
Or bye, right? A greeting or whatever you're leaving, right? It's like, why does this mean that? That's what a symbol is. It's an example of a symbol, whether through association or whatever the case may be, or convention. It is something visible that represents this thing that we call a greeting. It's like, I'm letting you know I'm fucking leaving or I just arrived.
Dude, that's crazy. Like the amount of different neurons and receptors, or the amount of information that has to be fired simultaneously and arranged very specifically for you to know that, because if we're thinking about it really at the practical level, it's the same thing that's happening over and over again. This neuron fires, meaning it'll release some serotonin or some potassium or dopamine or whatever the case is.
Right.
And that's uptaken by these other neurons, right? But the degree of specificity that has to take place in order for you to decipher when these neurons fire, it means yes. When these neurons fire, it means no. When these neurons fire, and then it happens in this sequence, it's a whole story that plays out in your mind with all these different images and what this color, that color, what that facial expression means, all at the same fucking time. That is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And we have definitions for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
We have specific labels to decipher all of that.
The interesting thing is like the layers of it. It's
yeah.
Like, you could be like fucking depressed and all that stuff. Somebody walks in the room and they wave at you and you're just kind of like, it's like you're focused on so much bullshit and you're still able to process that them walking in the room. And it wasn't this, it was just like that. And you still know that that means a greeting and responding to it. And that's a good way to maintain the relationship and all this shit. So they don't really acknowledge that you're depressed because you don't really want them to, but even though you kind of do want them to, so you get their attention to help you out of your depression. Like there's so many layers to it, not realizing that that's all happening unconsciously. When you're listening to me speak, you're not thinking, okay, eardrum, I want you to receive those sound vibrations that are being picked up by, you know, the solenoid and the microphone and then being replicated by a solenoid in your headphones or speaker. And then those sound compressions, it'll hit your eardrum. And I want you to vibrate at the same rate as those to take that information and then create another impulse into the brain. And then I want this auditory complex of my brain to be able to process that and then feed it to me as thought. We're not thinking about any of that.
Yeah.
That's the unconscious. The unconscious is a physical thing that is then creating thoughts in your head. And you think the thoughts are who you are. That's the fucking problem. You think that the AI is beyond whatever. The point being that in regards to the whole, what is life? What's different than my thumbnail and the headphone jack on a computer? Fundamentally, it's made out of physical substance that both came from the earth. Now, you can take physical substance and create a lot of different functions of it or uses, right? Like a hammer. Like I don't want you to hammer, even though we're made out of the same substance, the physical earth, right? Or the physical substance is the most general way of referring to it. That's why I'm saying it like that. I don't want you to use my head to hammer in nails. I want you to use a hammer for that. We have different functions. Just like a man and a woman. Different functions. Right? But the more we don't accept that, the more you're going to use my head to nail in the nail and use the hammer to try to fucking run a business, for example. And I know I'm being facetious. I'm giving an extreme example, but there's a spectrum of the way that we confuse the function of things. So bringing it back to, can you say something?
Yeah, before you go there, that word confuse, it's like what's actually fundamentally happening is different, going back to the neurons in the brain, different neurons are firing when they shouldn't be firing. Right.
Why are you getting emotional about that situation?
Right. And it's giving you an entirely different message than what you're actually being presented with. Right. And so it's like, man, it's like you get this input, or you know how on your TV screen, like old school TVs, you could change the color or the hue or the tint or whatever.
Right.
Right. And so you'd see like green people.
Yeah.
So it's like seeing green people and going, what the fuck? What is wrong?
Aliens,
Yeah. Like I can't believe this broadcasting network is going to show me green people all day long. I hate this broadcasting network when it's really your TV that's fucked.
Oh,
right. Spells. You got to adjust that shit. And so in context of your own brain, it's like, if you were raised ineffectively, which we all were, right? Because why do I say we all were? Because we're not all automatically with the starting point of doing what's best for all life, because that's what makes the most sense to do.
And even before that, like in terms of being raised effectively, it's like you can't even produce the effect you want. Like you can't even get the things that you want out of life.
That too. But I'm making the argument for anyone who says like, oh, well, what about the elite? They're raised effectively. Well, they don't have that starting point. So no, they're not, because they don't realize how that's coming to bite them in the ass later on. Right.
That's why their lives aren't as good as they possibly can be. It can be better if they didn't have to focus on controlling everybody.
Yeah. It's like exactly what people imagine heaven to be. Right. Wouldn't that be better than what they're even experiencing right now?
Right.
You know? And so, and part of the fundamental reason for that is because everyone's taken care of. You don't have to worry about shit. Right. And I imagine, you know, if you're thinking about heaven, like you can create whatever it is that you want to create. That's okay. I'm suggesting let's do that here as well. You know, like let's create that. And so the point that I'm making with this is, if you were raised ineffectively, you're having that confusion. The neurons are firing that shouldn't be firing, and you're accepting that as who you just are. And we're suggesting you can correct that. You should correct that. Here's the way to do it.
And so a state of confusion is the definition, and you can look this up for yourself. Don't believe me, but that is the definition of the word disorder. And what we were talking about before is it is the confusing the functions of the different forms of physical substance. Not being able to properly identify what the function of this structure is, of that structure is, of that structure is. What's the point of it? And how do we utilize me most effectively? How do I utilize you most effectively? All of us together, right? The definition of disease, if you look it up right now, don't take my word for it. It is the disorder. It is a disorder of the function or structure of a human or plants, etc. But as it relates to this, and then it says especially, and it goes on to much more detail, but as it produces symptoms and all these things. But the point is, fundamentally, what disease is, it is a disorder or a state of confusion about the function or structure of a human. There's a principle that all life operates on. And this will give you more insight as to when Cameron says, like, are we real? Are we even alive? Because if we were alive, we would function on the same principle that life functions on. What's that principle? You guys frozen? You guys still there? I got worried.
Do his best role.
I don't know when you're being rhetorical or not.
Me neither. I was literally, I always decide in the moment, but in that moment, I legit thought you guys may have been frozen. But right, it's the principle of doing what is best for all, which is why you can murder all the trees in a tree family and just leave one tree standing, and it'll just keep giving. Because it knows that if it doesn't give, it's not going to get oxygen. So might as well keep giving CO2. Right? You can kill its entire
the other way around. The other way around.
Was it?
The other way around. If it doesn't keep giving, it won't get CO2. It gives oxygen.
Oh
You
yes,
just-
thank you.
You
Thank you.
just
My bad.
disordered it as if nobody.
Yeah, I just disordered it. I'm
Back, yeah.
confused. Shit, that's how you create disease right there.
It's
But
all
yes,
the same
exactly.
source, guys. If the plant wants to identify as taking in oxygen,
We have to go with what it identifies as. You're right. But yeah, basically, if the plant did not receive CO2, or if it didn't put out oxygen, it wouldn't receive CO2. So that's why it should keep giving. I got it right that time, right?
I'm gonna have the first trans dog. Like
What?
I'm gonna have a cat that identifies as a dog.
Well, that's pretty good.
I'm gonna feed it dog food.
Right. Exactly. Like, is that the right thing to do?
But you see,
We're
like
just
when
calling
people,
it. We're just gonna call it food, Cameron.
but what you're talking about is the physical point, right? People instead nowadays are going with some identity of something abstract in their mind instead of learning about what they physically are. And it's ironic because the whole postmodern movement was like, hey, everything is a construct, right? All these things we believe in and hold ourselves to are constructs. But instead of realizing that and being like, okay, let's get back to actually what's physically real, they're like, oh, let's just fucking make up our own constructs. It's like, no, that's disorder. That's totally going off the deep end of what's actually real. To this, it's the same thing that the elite are doing. So it plays into the point of like, you're not really who you are physically. Your body's not real. It's all just for the hereafter. It's for the mind. It's for spiritual. It's all that stuff. But that's what is creating the disorder because you're not considering what's physically here. You know, we were talking about like what life is. Everything is alive, but everything's in a different form. So everything has different needs. But if you're stuck within just thinking about the feelings and your identity and so forth, rather than physically what's real, you're not even going to treat yourself effectively. You're not going to treat others effectively. And then you're going to end up creating more and more disorder because things aren't going to be functioning properly. Right.
And
So to
so,
bring it home,
and
bring
so
it back to source, Asif.
really looking at that point of if you are wondering what the benefit of transhumanism is, it can't be realized or made real until you change who you are. And anybody who fears it, you shouldn't be afraid because everyone's already overtaken by fucking an artificial intelligence. It's called an ego. It's called the algorithms. Like the reflection of you being alive would be that you're focused on doing what is best, or developing, or you wanting to be alive is you developing doing what is best within yourself, giving as you want to receive, right? Where the point was like Jesus, right? It wasn't just like this, it wasn't just a recommendation of like give as you want to receive. He was saying what goes around comes around. You are going to receive. You know how people say like you're going to get back what you put out, so then they just vibrate? They do nothing. So you're going to get nothing. Right? It's like you're going to receive the way you give. If I punch Drake, Drake's going to be like, "What the fuck? Punch me back."
Everyone thinks that they're just vibrations. And so now the elite are like, okay, you're just vibrations. We're just going to hook you up to a cryptocurrency and let you vibrate and like make us money and so forth. They're literally just going to treat you like that's all you are.
There you go. So the point being, Jesus was saying, hey, this is how reality works. Whatever you put out, that's what you're going to get back. So considering that, you should put out what you want to get back. You should give as you want to receive because that's how it's going to be. So considering that, it's like, okay, whether you're afraid of living forever or you want to live forever, whether you're afraid of the transhumanism and being put into a robot, all that stuff, or you want that, either way, you're fucked. Is there any other way to say it?
I mean, you're fucked, but within that, you have one real choice that you can make, which is the choice to actually do what's best. That's the only real choice we have.
If you exist as that principle, it doesn't matter what happens to your mind. It doesn't matter what happens to your consciousness. It doesn't matter if you fucking become a robot or if you fucking die. It doesn't matter if you exist as that principle. If you don't exist as the principle, same thing. It doesn't matter, because all you are is living words. So if you just exist as a piece of shit in the reality that you, or like in the set of rules that you find yourself in now as reality, then when you die and you find yourself in a new reality with a new set of rules, if that's the case or whatever, you're still going to be a piece of shit.
Yeah, I love how people think like, when I go to heaven, then I'll be good.
Then I'm going to be a great person.
Then I won't have these thoughts anymore. Like God's just gonna strip them from me. It's like, how is that you? First off, if you believe that you have free will, how is that you exercising free will at all? If God's just gonna take your thoughts from you when you die, right? And
This
second,
is the qualifier. This is the tryout.
right. You're a piece of shit. You don't make the team.
By the way, it says in the Bible that God in the beginning was the Word and the Word was God, right? So if you do enough technotutor, you get to know God directly. And so I just know what the requirements are. And if you don't do DIP, you don't get into heaven. So I just want to let everybody know that's just one of the requirements. That's like a base minimum.
So what can one do? You can go to self-perfected.com to find all these resources. You should check out our store. We got new stuff coming out every week. And
or you can buy a hat. That's another way you can get in.
Yeah.
Buy a hat or a t-shirt.
Yeah, and share this with people, because if we don't share this, guess what is going to be shared? Fucking Bitcoin hookup.
Become a miner.
Yeah.
Be a miner. Except you don't
hook up with a miner. Hold on, slow down. That's not what we're trying to say here. Slow down. Bring
You
it
know,
back.
That's so funny. You remember
get my
like
points back up.
remember when all those miners were losing their jobs and they were telling them learn to code? Well, here's their opportunity. Now they can be miners and coders at the same time.
You are the code.
That's right.
That's so good.
Go to self-perfected.com and join us on the calls because they're fun. We had like how many people on the last one?
65
on just the Zoom part.
Yeah.
Plus like 15 or so people on Facebook. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
They're just growing steadily.
Yeah.
Man, what an epic, man. That was probably the most feedback we've gotten on a call because we talked about God, what God is. Right?
Can you talk about that? What was the call like for everybody who wasn't maybe heard or whatever?
Man. It's so fun because you get so many people from around the world with different perspectives. But it's like, I genuinely enjoy hearing from every single person. It's not like those calls where there's like, oh, there's like that person talking again. It's like, no, we intentionally curate.
We'll just kick those people out anyway. So.
Yeah. It's like anyone who's spiteful or clearly not getting it.
Yeah,
they're just out.
Like where they're not
Go
even
use your technotutor for a while. Come back when you can actually process.
But where they're not even trying to get it right. Like there's people who put forth all of their perspectives. There's so many different perspectives, but everybody came from the starting point of like, okay, here's my understanding of it. Mm-hmm. Rather than like, okay, this is what you have to understand. Like you guys are wrong, right? And so, the cool part was, well, I'm wondering what would be a good forum for people to share what they. Well, people are sharing in the group. They made some posts and videos and stuff like that, which is really cool. Of not just the challenge, but also that call.
That's cool.
Right. And so these points about how the community of people who are really like questioning these things and or even just an environment where it's safe to question things. Because if you question the Black Lives Matter now in your environment, what happens? If you question the mask now in your environment with your family, what happens? You see what I'm saying? So the point is, one, you participate. You fucking be commenting. You put yourself in it, give as you want to receive. Because the truth is, the group benefits from you being there. You being that other number, it's extremely beneficial. And what you have to say is valuable because someone might need to hear it from you the way you're going to say it. So be there to give, because when you need to receive, the group will be there for you. So make sure that you're participating in the group. And then the second thing is support other people to participate in the group. Share the podcast. Make sure you give those little support points of likes and subscribe. And that's one important thing too. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the Spotify, whatever it is, whatever you're listening to this on. Make sure that you subscribe, because again, that's extremely valuable to you being able to see more content like this, and other people seeing this and seeing the credibility of like, oh shit, like this is pretty cool. They're just going to be 1% more likely to listen. And that might be the tipping point for them to actually listening, and them actually listening might be the tipping point to them using these tools and changing their lives. All it takes
creating a better world,
and creating a better world, right? All it takes is you just making the decision of, okay, every time when I start listening to one of these, I'll like it, subscribe, and make sure I'm subscribed, but like it, maybe comment and share it, and then I'll listen. And if you make it a system inside of you of giving, you're going to get more out of these. I guarantee you. I guarantee you, you're going to get more out of it. So where every time you go to listen to the podcast, you like it, comment, do a quick share, or you can even write a little something on it, whatever the case may be, you will get more out of these podcasts. You will listen more intently, subconsciously.
Should have said that at the beginning.
Fuck, dude. Copy and paste.
For those
we'll
of you who
just
just
get it
skipped to
with-
the end, welcome to the podcast. Now go back and
We'll just get a stick intro with a squiggly circle, and it has a bunch of symbols on it, and it'll just program everyone to do
I'll
it.
get right on that.
All right. Till next week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.